Hey everybody, I'm Carly and I am so happy to be on the Shit Show and hosting the Shit Show for you today. The Shit Show is a podcast where I interview guests that have been through shitty situations. They live to tell about it, and I'll ask them various questions on going through their shit show and their biggest life lessons that they learned about themselves. And today I'm so excited to have Phillip Andrew on my program. And I want to say a quick bio about Phillip. Phillip Andrew, by day, he's an Emmy-nominated television producer in LA. And in between projects, he travels all around the country. I know he speaks to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and college students on, he shares his story and inspires them just like he's going to inspire you today. So Phillip, thank you so much for being on the Shit Show today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor, and it's always interesting when your bio is being read and you're on camera and you don't know what to do. You're like, Ricky Bobby, you're like, I don't know what to do with my hands. You're like, I don't know what to do with my face right now. Am I impressed with myself? How do I handle this? Right. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Hopefully it wasn't too awkward to hear about yourself. Okay.
No, not at all.
Because you have some good accolades.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
I've been very blessed along the way of, I tried my damnedest to really just tear the whole thing to the ground and burn the whole thing. I had a lot of times I just tried to really burn this thing down. And luckily enough, I've been very fortunate that I've had amazing people in my life that have kind of, picked me up, dusted me off, helped me out. And I get to benefit from the hard work and love of other people. So I'm very happy and glad to be here today and talk about a shit show. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. I know it's the title that just grabs people. And that's exactly why I named it the Shit Show.
Yeah.
So
I need like a counter. Like, I feel like there should be a counter or a tally. Like, how many times did we say, shit in each episode? Like,
probably.
And at the end, it'll just be like, and just for those of you keeping, I'll go to my announcement. For those of you that have been keeping tabs at home, today's shit show counter was 37 times. And then they get like a free, you get a free ebook.
Yes, you're hired to be that voice, Phillip. You're hired.
Excellent.
Okay, so I've been following you. We've been Facebook friends. I don't know exactly how we became Facebook friends, but I'm so happy we did. There's always... Well, it's never just a coincidence. Mm-hmm. There's always a reason, and I firmly believe that deep down. There's a reason why we connected. And I know a little bit about your story, but I don't know what you're going to share today. So for those of you watching, for those viewers that are going through something really shitty right now, what's calling to you that you want to share, like your biggest shit show in life?
Man, there's just so many.
I know.
No. I think, one of the biggest defining moments for my life, right, is, and I guess it's timely. We're getting close to the anniversary of it, where, January 28th, 2008, I had the luxury of waking up in the Melvindale, Michigan Police Department holding cell, and had the luxury of waking up, and my butlers were holding guns and bulletproof vests, and they were allowing me to sleep off the mistakes that I had made, and then reality, as the alcohol disappeared from the system, the shame, the guilt, the frustration, the, oh my God, what did I just do? The shit show, so to speak, really kind of started to settle in. So I think that when I think of defining moments in my life, right, that's really one of the big ones. So I have this story that, I've talked about. Obviously I share it with kids, and but I don't want it ever to feel like I'm giving like a rehearsed speech, especially in this thing. So, I guess kind of a little bit of my backstory, just to kind of start at the beginning, is, I'm originally from Metro Detroit. I grew up actually the son of a cop. My mother was involved in school board. So from a very young age, I feel like a lot of us, right? You have those insecurities of just like, you're just trying to figure out how you fit in the world, and you're trying to figure things out, and you're learning new things, and you're experiencing new people. And from a young age, I kind of watched my parents, who were, kind of well known in the community. And I watched them, and I started to get that feeling even at a young age that like, there's this thing called a reputation, that you have to protect, that you have, and I think for me, I started even at a young age, really started to own like, oh my God, everything I do is going to impact my family. Everything I do is a sign of them. And like, as a kid, all you want to do is make your family happy and proud of you. And so I think, I started to really identify as just being the special little kid, right? Like I needed to be all A's. I needed to be good in sports. I needed to be teacher's pet. I needed to do all of those things. But then the flip side is I'm hanging out with kids that are all a little bit older than me. And I'm going through I'm trying to be like the perfect child on one end. And then on the other side, I'm kind of dealing with I don't want to be the cop's kid. I don't want to be the school board member's kid. Like I want to be tough. I want to be cool. I want to be Detroit, And so I was kind of torn between these two things. And it just gave me a little bit of anxiety as a kid where I didn't really understand what that meant. That kind of continued on where it was just always am I cool enough? Am I smart enough, funny enough, attractive enough? Am I all those things? And then hanging out with those older guys when they're 15, 16, 17, they start drinking. Boom, I'm drinking at 11. I'm at a party, hanging out with those guys and trying to be cool and trying to act as though I belong, trying to find my place where I belong. So I started drinking. That gave me that like momentary answer to like where all this feeling was coming from. Like I didn't really have other coping skills. I didn't understand the power of being vulnerable and sharing what I was really going through. So the alcohol kind of just gave me that moment of like, ooh, I don't care. I don't care right now. I don't care about this reputation. I don't care about what my parents are doing. I don't care how this reflects on anyone. I don't care about anything. Alcohol allowed me to be in the moment. And so that kind of became a little bit of a crutch as I started going through, obviously 11, what you're like middle school, I get into high school and, I was still holding strong onto that identity of being a perfect kid. Like I need to be perfect. Got to get good grades, all those things. So I'm still I'm still on the honor roll. I'm still taking all my classes. I'm, on the sports teams. I'm doing that.
And your parents didn't know you were drinking?
Didn't know I was drinking. Right. Okay. And I'm doing this whole thing. And then, we're at, I'm playing, I think it was like February, I'm playing sports. And I remember sitting there and we're at the table before a basketball game. And it's like me, my dad, my sister, my mom had, she had a gallstone. And so she was in the hospital for the gallstone. And, we're all just sitting there kind of joking and laughing and watching TV. And then all of a sudden, like I look at my dad and it's like this weird, just all of a sudden his face just completely changes. And he walks over to the TV and he turns the television off. And I'm like, everything felt fine. And I'm looking at him and I don't know if he's like going to sneeze, like what he's going to do. I don't know what his deal is. Like he's got this weird face on and he just stops and he just says like, you guys, your mom doesn't have a gallstone like your mother has colon cancer. And he didn't say it in the moment, but she's pretty late to the game. We were pretty late to finding out. And so I remember we sat there and we just cried and cried and cried. And then I just went in my room and put my basketball jersey on and went to a game. And that was my way of dealing with it was, hey, people get sick. People, whatever. It happens. It happens to people. Like I wanted to be so adult about it or whatever I thought that meant. I'm fine. I'm mature. I get it. And, we had an 11-month battle with cancer. And unfortunately, my mother passed away a week before my 16th birthday. And so you take a kid who's already kind of grown up with a little bit of this, like not feeling good enough, like as a lot of us do. Right. And a lot of kids today are being raised with the exact same feelings of not being good enough. But you take a kid that doesn't have the right coping skills. He starts to believe that alcohol is the right way. So this kind of dysfunctional fire is starting to build. And then my mother passes and you just pour some gasoline on it. Yeah. And so I'm just deep down, I'm just angry and frustrated and scared. My mom's gone. I don't know what this means. Death is now super real. And I think it was just one of those things where I didn't know how to. People told me, hey, they wanted to talk, they were there. And I learned to tell enough to where you'd stop asking me questions. Like, I learned pretty quickly that I can't say like, hey, I'm fine, because people knew I wasn't. So I had to learn, how do I give you enough so that you'll stop asking me? But I can't give you too much because I'm not ready to go there. And I don't know I don't really want to do it. It's scary. So for me, the drinking really kind of started to kick up. I built that identity. I wanted to be Stifler from American Pie. Like, I wanted to be the guy that I wanted to hook up with the girls. I wanted to break things. I wanted to get in fights. I wanted to be the wild one. I wanted to be the one that everyone didn't know what he was going to do with the party. Like, I began to become almost addicted, not only just to the alcohol, but I was addicted to the chaos. So much of my life was always so structured. This is how you have to behave this way to do this. So that when I got the alcohol, it was such a relief from holding myself so tightly to this idea that I loved the chaos. I loved it. And so that, long story short, which I'm not very good at short stories, as you can tell. But what it turned out to be, at 18, I crashed my car drinking and driving. 19, got arrested. 20, I got arrested again for alcohol-related things. Still graduated college early, finished in 3.5 years. So I was using that mindset of, hey, I have this. Hey, everyone, look at this success. Look at this one success I have. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain, right? And so I had that one success, and then lucky for me, 11 days before I moved to California, I got hit for that DUI. And it was in that moment, you think, actually, to be honest, there was that entitled cops kid waking up the next morning and almost expecting all right, you guys, you locked me up. Like, okay, let me go home. And I'm, we're going to erase this thing. And it didn't happen. And it was actually one of the greatest things that ever happened, because it allowed me, I had issues with alcohol, yes, but my issues were so much deeper than just my inability to handle alcohol. It was just pain and anger and frustration and entitlement and shame and just all of these things that I didn't have any tools to be able to work through. And then, so once I finally, 22, I got sober, thank you, state of Michigan. Appreciate you guys for holding me to that. And then that kind of kickstarted my experience with recovery. And, now I've been coming up on 11 years since that day and haven't had a drink since. And it's been truly out of the love and support of my family, and also the love and support of 100% complete strangers that I've met.
So cool.
Yeah, that I met in recovery, that really just gave me such an opportunity to be able to live the type of life that I do today.
Wow. First, I want to say I'm sorry about your mom, losing your mom.
Oh, thank you.
At 16, I have a son that's 16, and you're going through so much as it is being a hormonal 16-year-old, still learning who you are. I mean, shit, I'm 44, about to be 45. I'm still learning about myself.
Yeah. And they say some of the worst things, some of the things while we want to stand out, we don't. Like, we want to be part of we still want to be, we're trying to fit in. Like, we're trying to figure out our, where we stand, and who are our friends, and how, and who are we? And we're coming in, there's so many new experiences. And it was then for me, it was such a thing of I didn't want to be the kid with a cops or with a dead mom. I didn't want, I didn't want your sympathy, and then, because then what happens is you feel like you can't trust anyone's intentions, because you think that everyone is coming at you with already this perception of who you are. And so you have that. And then even without that, I just naturally had that. I had been wearing this mask of who I thought you wanted me to be, this perfect idea, this kid. And it was the mask, the bigger that gap got between like who I allowed you to see and who I actually was, the bigger that gap got, the more frustrated and more discontent I felt, and the more alone I felt. Because even if you gave me a compliment, you know, it was, you weren't giving it to me. You were giving it to the version of me I let you see. So and it was always that like mindset of like, if you really knew who I was, if you really knew everything about me and what I think and what I've done, and like, you wouldn't like me. And that was, and you know, and like, that was the mentality. It was like, if you really truly knew me, you wouldn't love me. You wouldn't want to be around me. And like, it's such a sad, like, as I say it and I think about me, it's like, it's such a sad feeling to have. And it's not like I'm some unique case. Like, there are kids at your son's school right now that are emotionally going through that, where they feel alone, and it's that you can be completely surrounded by people and friends and you know, followers on Instagram, and have all these people that you feel a certain level of connection with, but still feel 100% kind of alone, because there's that difference between who you really are and who you're letting people see.
So deep down, it sounds like you felt like you were a fraud.
Oh man, there was always that feeling of like, I'm just waiting for you all to figure it out.
Oh,
you know, like I'm just like
but you
imposter.
didn't think of it back then, did you? Like, did you?
Oh no.
No.
You're just a kid, and you're like running through life, and you're like, you know, oh, I'm cool because I drink. Like, that's literally like, that's like so much of my, and that's something I've always had to go back to and be really honest with myself, is like, am I making this stuff up? Like, am I adding, if I'm just like making it sound good, right? Like, I have to do that and be honest about like where I was at and how I felt. But I think there's so many things that I've seen after the fact, you know, like even I used to do a lot of very, so drinking and driving was obviously my thing. I used to drink and drive a lot. And there would be times where I'd get home 2 o'clock, 2:15, 3 o'clock in the morning after the bar. And the strip of road that we lived on was like, you know, it was a neighborhood, and it was about 7/10 of a mile from one of the stoplight or from a stop sign until the end of the road. And I would just gun it, like get up, and I had a little 1995 Ford white Escort, and I would drive, and I'd get up to 95, 100 miles an hour on these side streets. There was probably three or four stop signs that I would just completely gun through. And there's the rush of like, you're a young kid, you're being stupid, you're ambitious, or you're, you know, like you're not in the right state of mind because you're intoxicated. So it seemed like a good idea. You're not thinking like, oh man, a kid could walk out at any moment. It's over. You're not thinking that. You're just thinking, I'm wild, I'm crazy, I'm Stifler, look at me. Yeah. But I think there's also a piece of me that like, I kind of wanted to get caught. Like, I had this act, and everyone was getting fooled by it. And it was like, I just wanted people to really see how hurt I was, and how sad I was, and how angry I was. And it was like, there was also elements of like, you guys might have forgot, but like, my mom is still gone. Like, sure, she died 6 months ago. She died a year ago. She died 2 years ago. But anyone who's listening, and you know it, you've experienced loss, like, you know, time doesn't heal wounds. It doesn't. Working on it does, right? Like there's two phrases that I don't agree with. Time heals all wounds. I don't believe in it. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I don't believe it. If those were true, 85-year-olds, we'd have the strongest group of 85, 90-year-olds walking around. But that's not true. What makes you strong is how you come through on the other side, is what you do, the work that you do on yourself to make sure that you are learning and growing and processing and grieving. Like, it doesn't just magically happen. You have to do the work. And I hadn't done the work. I was in a lot of pain. Didn't get how everyone else just got to continue on living their life. And so I think there was a piece of me that really I just wanted somebody to see me for who I really was, and not for not for the, honor roll version of you that I was showing you.
Right. Well, and you were talking about reputation and how, how you realize at such a young age, younger than 16, how important it was. And I don't know if that was something that your parents really instilled in you, that your reputation was kind of everything. I mean, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouths, but that's so much pressure to put on yourself.
Yeah.
To keep up with this, I don't know, not facade, but just keep up with this kind of alter ego, like,
totally.
Reputation. And go ahead.
It's funny you even say alter ego, because it's just straight ego. Like for me, like nobody really no one cared. Like,
right.
No one is paying attention to what like Officer Barb's kid is up to and but I thought I was so important. And, I think we do that so often. We think that everyone is just really caught up in like what we're doing. I think that idea is what prevents us from actually going after and chasing a lot of the dreams that we have inside of us, is this idea that like, oh, people are going to judge us. What if I'm not perfect at it? People are going to judge. And then I got to, like people on Facebook are going to make a Facebook group talking about how Phil Barb failed this thing and he was trying to do it. And it's like, no, nobody cares. No one cares. Everyone's caught up in their own thing. Everyone's in their own head,
But when you're that young, it does. Like you think, oh my God, this is everything.
And it's also, I love my father. Like grew up, like that's my hero. Like I watched my dad put a bulletproof vest on every day and go to work. Like that was what I was seeing every day, leave to go to work. Like that sense of community, that sense of, like my dad stands between those that want to hurt people. Like like that was how I felt. And so like all I want to do is make them happy. And that's not to overgeneralize, because I always try to be very careful not to generalize and put people in boxes, because I don't really like it. But a lot of statistics say like how massive, like we all want to make our parents proud, but like for men, that love and admiration that we have for our fathers, like we want to honor that so much, And so I had that, like I didn't want to do anything that would embarrass my father, And then I think there would be times where like even that idea of like that shame and that guilt, I think that's what prevents us from really being honest a lot of times. It's like, well, what if that one person knew? What would happen if my dad knew or my mother knew? Or, and that prevents us from really being able to like get a lot of freedom from the shame and the fear and the guilt that we feel over things. I think it's also like the isolating factor of it, right? Like when we're not sharing what we're going through, it just lives inside of us. It's just, secrets grow in the dark. Like they just constantly stay and they just get bigger and they become more and more overwhelming for us. Whereas like when we finally when we can be in an environment with other people that are being genuine, caring, that are being supportive, we're sharing with them. Also, I think one thing that a lot of people forget about, like the power of vulnerability is a two-way street. Sure, you get to be vulnerable and you get to get your stuff out there, but it's not purely selfish. Like you also get to, if you're doing that with somebody else and they're allowing you the same way, like you get to be of service to them. You get to be able to show up and be a supportive unit for somebody else or for a group of people. And I think that level of understanding and that level of community in that service to one another, I think is really such a powerful healing ingredient for like the recipe of our like emotional intelligence and emotional success and just like peace, feeling peace and not feeling this heaviness of all the lies and all the years of shame and guilt that kind of like can overwhelm us. Yeah, exactly. Were you going to say something about the alter ego? Or did you cover that? No, I don't know. My alter ego. Yeah. I've got this guy named Greg that I walk around LA and pretend that I am sometimes. And he wears a cape. And it's such a weird place to go. I don't know. I don't know who this Greg guy is with his cape. But my girl's name is Trixie. Okay. Oh, you have an alter ego. You know. Oh, I do. Yeah, she's a bitch though. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. When she comes out, she starts saying, "Remember when you did that? God, you suck. Oh, and remember like this? Yeah, you just were terrible, and you sucked at this." Oh, the resentment holder, huh? The resentments, the tally holder, the one. But yours sounds cool. Yours sounds so much cooler. It's only because the cape. He's
Yeah.
got a cape. He's got a cape. Yeah. But so that is, now to kind of continue, where is it now? Right. So,
Right.
so I got sober. I stayed in Michigan for a year. Then I was able to, got everything together, moved out to California, started working in entertainment. So I've been working in entertainment for the last decade now. So I've worked, shows for Netflix, YouTube Red, as a producer for reality TV and documentary series. And so that's been very, very fulfilling. I always grew up loving entertainment. And so that's been really cool to move out and to be in the industry and be able to create entertainment. And through that, it kind of has, weaved a little bit and started doing media coaching, which was helping people be better on camera and getting, better performances out of themselves. That then led into doing, kind of more general, life coaching. People call it personal development coaching. People are trying to distance themselves as much from the term life coach now.
I know. Yeah.
And so it's like, I do, I have that kind of background where a lot of it where I focus is really helping people. I focus with people that are here in LA, right? A lot of creatives. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of people that have multiple revenue streams. So it can be very difficult when you are a actor / Uber driver / real estate rental property guy, right? Like it can be difficult to navigate all those things. So I work with people to really help them get, they can be very creative, but a lot of times people lack the ability to really be disciplined and organized. So I help people kind of with that. And then I do the speaking, as you kind of mentioned, going to high schools and colleges. And I also speak here in the Los Angeles County jail system with inmates that are in jail and talk about substance abuse and things like that. And the statistics are very high on the amount of people that are incarcerated that were intoxicated or under some sort of mind altering substance when they committed the crime that they were in for. Mm-hmm. And it's a huge gap or loop. If people don't find a way to get themselves out of the same people, places, things, it just becomes more and more and more of the same thing. So try to talk with guys about that and just offer encouragement. And it's very, like I said at the beginning of the show, like I feel very lucky that, I've had the opportunity and that my life has kind of turned out the way it did because, man, there's so many times where you're just one circumstance away from it being a completely different life, and I feel like that's why gratitude is such a massive thing for me. Like service and gratitude are kind of like the big two pillars of my life that I have to stick by. And anytime I want to get down and wonder like, oh, I'm not far enough in my career or this or this or this. And it's like that craziness that we always go through. I have to remember that, like, I'm living in the bonus, like any of those nights could have ended very poorly. And anything from here on out is just a bonus and it's an amazing thing. And, so that's kind of, that's my little bit of my, that's my shit show story. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like that, and I keep hearing Tony Robbins like in the back of my head because he talks about sometimes that
who's he? Tony, who's that guy? Who's Tony? Is that, I don't know. I've never heard of him.
This guy, heard about him.
I've heard of him before.
So he's not that big of a deal, but
okay.
Yeah. So he mentions that when you hit a rock bottom in whatever situation, and I don't want to assume that it was the night that you talk about where your butlers, were there and your maids and all that, when you were coming to in the jail cell. But he talks about how people get to this point where they say, I'm done, enough is enough. There's a turning point, and it might not be that dramatic, but he says a lot of people remember where they were, what they were wearing, like their environment around them, because that's when they make this pivotal switch. Mm-hmm. And they all of a sudden see, I have a choice in this. Yeah. I don't have to stay at this rock bottom. But do you have a turning point like that?
You know what? I don't think it was like one massive thing, because I actually remember even before I moved to California, before I got the DUI, I kind of I had an inkling that like something was wrong. Like I knew I was unhappy. I knew that I was drinking in a different way than my friends were. I knew that I had kind of this, I knew I had that discontent. I knew something was off. And I remember, and this is hilarious for anyone that knows anything about Los Angeles and the environment here, but I remember just being like, oh, well, I'll stop drinking and partying once I get to LA. Like, like it'll be like, oh, I can get it under wraps there. And so it's like, I had that feeling, and there were moments that probably could have been, the bottom. And to be honest, I think that my bottom is still out there if I choose to not stay, on top of it, like it could get really bad again if I don't appreciate that. And I don't, I think the one problem that happens at times is we do have those moments. And I think that those moments are amazing, but you don't take a shower on Monday and be clean all week. So there's not this magic door that you walk through and then all of a sudden it's completely amazing on the other side. My mother's death, right? Like I had to deal with a lot of things from that. I had to grieve it properly. I had to address it. And I always kind of talk about it as if it was this door at the end of the hallway that I was afraid to go through, but I knew I needed to go. So I finally get up the courage, and this isn't like I got sober and then I address it. Like it took me still another 5-6 years. I was probably 25, 26 before I actually was able to start to address the grief that I felt. So I go back and I'm going through it. And then it was like, I get better, but then certain things would creep up. Or even what had happened was people that when you study grief, a lot of times there's these two terms that people frequently use, and it's called bedevilment and enshrinement. So a lot of times when there's a death or even a death of a relationship, a divorce, a lot of times we do one of two things, right? We either enshrine the person, which is what I did with my mother. They're like, she's the greatest person alive. She never did anything wrong. She was a saint. She was Mother Teresa. How could this work, right? We do that. Or the bedevilment, which is something that happens a lot of times in divorce, right? Like, he was awful. He was the worst thing ever. He was this, he was that. And it's like, very rarely is any human at the extreme, right? Yeah. Like it's not common that you find somebody at the exact same extreme. So generally when people have this mindset of this bedevilment or this enshrinement, it's normally a lack of proper grieving through the process. So the interesting thing that I dealt with was, okay, so I start going through the grieving process and I realize I've enshrined my mother. Great. So I start working through it and I'm able to bring my mother back to a human level of understanding. Well, now I'm older and I'm going through things she did and I've got resentments.
Interesting.
And so now the resentments have always been there. It's not, but I thought I felt guilty for having them because I didn't want to drag my mother through the mud. Right. So it's not that, oh man, and someone might hear this and be like, well, I don't want to grieve properly because then I don't want to drum up all this old stuff. It is there. It's not that I created it. It's right there. And you don't get away from it. It's just another piece of baggage holding you down. But so it was like, it was frustrating at first when I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm finally grieving my mother. I get her back to a realistic place as a human. I get back some of the memories. Oh, but then there's these memories and now I got resentments on those. And now I got to work through it again. I got another layer, right? That is all part of the process. And the one thing that I'll say is the Grief Recovery Institute here in Los Angeles did a study, and the average of what they decided was that the average American goes through a loss every 7 years of their life, right? So thinking, right, like you're young, your grandparents pass, then a mother or a father passes, maybe a family pet passes, you lose a job, the death of a relationship, right? Like the average, like of these things that need grief, every seven or so years. So if you're listening to this and you're 35 and you haven't done any grieving you've got five losses that are stacked up.
Oh shit.
So it's like, it's something to, and none of us really learn how to properly grieve. I didn't have grief
Right.
101 in college. And most of the things we say about grief to each other are just awful. Like, they're just wrong. Like, hey, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Like, cool. Thank you.
Oh,
That really
thanks.
not very helpful right now.
Mm-mm.
And so I don't know why I went off on this grief thing, but I think just about that idea of there's always work to be had, and there's always new, I really always have to remind myself of that idea of I'm always a work in progress. I'm never going to really be at this, like, I'm never going to walk through that magical door where everything is perfect. Like, life still keeps coming at us, and it's like struggle, hardship, failure will continue to come at us. And that isn't there to scare us. It's just to prepare us so that when it does come, we don't get rattled. We don't feel like we're doing something wrong and destroy us. And it's just part of life. It's part of the gift of life that we are able to go through life and experience all these different types of emotions and different things. But it is how we shape it. It's how we choose to look at it. Life is going to keep happening. It's our choice on what we want to make each little circumstance mean for ourselves.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing this shit show, is because it's almost like, let's celebrate that we have so many shit shows to pick from, because that means we have gone through a lot of shitty things, and we're here. Yeah. Survived. We will always survive, because that's the choice that, I want to make, you want to make, and we want to inspire others to make that choice too.
Well, the one thing I'll say, and with like general, like I'm a TV producer, so I'll talk in terms of entertainment, right? You watch any movie, and what makes a movie compelling, right? The story is the transformation, right? You started the movie as this person, you went through all this blah 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 blah, act 2, all right, like the build, all this thing, you go through the conflict, and then you're a new person on the other side, right? We don't like stories where you started out a good person and then went through something and then you were an awful person afterward, right? Like, that's not a fun story to watch. That's not, It's not aspirational. That's not what we want to be. We were this thing. We went through all of this. If the movie just stopped right there, it wouldn't be very fulfilling. It wouldn't be we wouldn't watch that. There's nothing that attracts us to that. What we want, and that's why I say it's not just the, like, time heals all wounds. Like, no, because then you just got a movie of watching the same person act the same way for the next 4 hours. It's not fun. Like, we have to be focused on who are we becoming? Like, how, like, sure, this thing happened. And honestly, we can look at it like some people, and, you have your story, I have my story, and I'm sure the people listening to this, that you have a story. Like, some people haven't been blessed with tragedy in a way that we have, to where we have the ability to become so much greater and so much more impactful through our resilience and through our development, and we're able to help other people. And does it suck going through it? Yeah. Would I have loved to have more years with my mother? Yes. But it happened. And it's like, how do we respond? Who do we become? So it's like, you look at our lives of who you were, you go through the conflict, it's not just there. And I see a lot of people get stuck right there. A lot of people, they think they become entitled to, well, I experienced this thing, so therefore I deserve that. Oh, yeah. And they get and it's like, entitlement is a self-imposed prison. If you think that you're, I had a talk with a friend. I used to have a roommate, and both of our parents, his mother had passed, and we were talking about something unrelated, and he was being very entitled. And I was like, hey man, like what you think, because you and I both lost our moms, we get to go to the front of the line? Like, is that what you like? That doesn't equate. Like, that's our own personal journey, our own personal thing. We have to transform out of that. We have to go from who we were. We experience this thing, and then we get to be so much more powerful and strong, and we get to be a light for others and continue to grow ourselves. And it's like, so whatever, if you're a listener to this, and thank you so much for the listeners, if you guys are still hanging out with us and you haven't gotten sick of me talking.
Nonsense.
But if you guys are, if you're in the middle of something or whatever you're going through, this may be the thing that allows you and gets you set up so that you can have a massive and powerful impact for other people that are also going through it. And that's not to say that to take away from what you're going through. It's not to say what you're experiencing isn't unique to you and isn't special and isn't difficult, because it is all those things. But also know that, like, you're not alone. There are people that want to be able to support you, that want to be there for you. And you're being set up for a life to where you actually can come out so strong from this.
Mm-hmm.
Will it take work? Yes. Is it easy? No, it's not. Frankly, it's not. But if the here's how I look at it. If my alternative was me living in that act 2 of my life, of me just staying there,
mm-hmm.
and what would have happened if it were a real movie and people were in that movie theater and I just kept on loop of relapsing and getting in fights and pissing off my family and hurting the people that loved me, and
mm-hmm.
people would leave the theater.
Mm-hmm.
They would eventually leave because it would be like, hey, is this going anywhere?
Or we'd all be screaming, don't do that again.
Right?
Yeah.
But at a certain point,
mm-hmm.
it's like, that's why, like, our personal responsibility is key, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
it's the entitlement will get us in trouble, thinking that we deserve something because of what we've experienced. Like, just going through things is not, just getting through it is, like, there's a time and place for that where that's all you can do, and that's fine. But then you have to start to find a new purpose in something bigger, in what you want your life to be about. And learn how to be able to show up and take the lessons from the tragedies that you've experienced so that you can move forward and be stronger in your own life. And if you feel called to it, then you can also provide that and help others through that journey. But it can't stop. It can't stop at act 2 and expect it to be a good story or a fun life to live.
Right. Yes, that's hugely important. I was thinking, I wonder if your message is different to high schoolers, because maybe, and I don't want to,
No, I just tell them, I go, get off my lawn and stop playing on the social media, you crazy kids.
It's interesting. Like, when you have your own kids, oh my gosh, it's like my dad died about almost 6 years ago. And I have not cried more since then. That was probably the biggest death that I've ever dealt with up until this point. And my kids hate to see me cry.
Yeah.
And, they're not super vocal. They're not super communicative or emotional, but that experience, I know, has helped me and my kids see crying is okay. Crying is okay. And so I keep preaching that. And I think, Phillip, I wonder if your message is, also to high school. And I'm thinking, God, I want you to speak to my kids' high school.
We can make it happen. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, let's make it happen. But my 16-year-old, shit happens. You get broken up with, you break up with somebody, stuff, you get cut from the baseball team, whatever. Not dealing with it is not a way to deal with it. I mean, yes, it's a way, but that doesn't work.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. So, and, as a parent, it's hard to see your kids go through something like that. And when they feel like that keeping it in is the best way, like, another saying I hate, keep it together. Yeah. No, don't freak it together.
Lose your shit.
Lose your shit. Yes. Lose your shit, please. Because it'll come sneak up. It'll sneak up on you, like in the middle class. All of a sudden, you'll break down crying, and you can't stop it. I mean, and I don't want it to be a threatening way to, like, deal with your shit now, so it doesn't creep up on you. And you know what I mean. But anyway, so what is your message for?
Yeah, I think one of the, and this is such a thing. I talk to a lot of parents and a lot of teachers about this, because it is that idea of, like, how do we connect with kids? Like, how do we get kids to communicate? And I think for the longest time, people have been saying like, well, I told them that I was there to listen. I told them that it was okay to listen. Like, I don't know why they didn't tell me. And it's like, when was the last time it worked when somebody was like, hey, you should go do this.
Right.
You should do,
okay.
it'd be right. Like, no,
Yeah.
like the way we have to model vulnerability. You don't tell a kid, hey, if you're going through something, you can come and tell me. And then I might silently judge you for it. And I'm going to tell you how to fix yourself, right?
Yeah.
That's how that's interpreted. It's, so what we have to do is, it's not about telling kids they have to be open and vulnerable and transparent. We have to, and I'm not telling parents, and I always say this, I'm not telling you to be your kid's best friend, because I think there's a time and place where parenting is, you have to still be a parent. It's not about being another friend. That's what they have their friends for, and you're a parent.
Absolutely.
But there is that time where, if we want kids to be authentic and vulnerable and transparent, we have to show them what that looks like. We have to be willing to do it. Hey, when I was your age, I went through this and I experienced this. And it's not in a, it's in a way of like, hey, I'm sharing this with you. Not as a lesson. I'm not trying it, and I think it's hard. Like, it's really difficult for us to silence the advice monster inside of us.
Yes. Or the fix it. Yes.
But we need to, like, if a kid, if a kid finally musters up the courage to come to an adult and say, I'm dealing with this. And then the adult half listens or hears it and then gets nervous because they don't know the answer, and they deliver some sort of, hey, go do this, and then they leave. That kid is like, well, I guess I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah.
And so what we have to do is showcase, like, we have to model that for kids. Model what authenticity looks like, model what vulnerability looks like. And then when we are given the honor of them opening up to us and sharing with us, we have to listen and be there and be supportive and listen, and not jump immediately to, oh, well, you just need to do this. Right. And also another problem that happens in what we do is we diminish children's problems because of their age, right? Like, right, like, I'm 33. If I'm firm belief that when I'm 45, I will look back at some of the things that tripped me up at 33 and think, well, that was kind of dumb. Like, I shouldn't have been upset about that, because I know better, right? But if 45-year-old me now was talking to me, telling me, oh man, don't worry, you're only 33. Like, things are going to, like, I don't want to hear that from you, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to just be supportive. So when we get in these mindsets of like, oh, well, you'll get it when you're older.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't help them now. That doesn't help them right now. They're in, like, there's a difference between an intellectual argument and an emotional argument. The intellectual argument is the one that says, oh, well, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Sure, statistically, there are other people out there. But emotionally, that doesn't do much for me right now, other than tell me you don't understand where I'm at, and now I feel more alone. So thank you. So what we have to do is treat kids. I always say treat kids 5 years older than they are. Don't treat them like an adult. Don't treat them like they're 45 and know better, because they don't. But what we do treat them as, give them the benefit of the doubt and treat them a little bit older. Like, respect what they're going through and understand that what they're going through is monumental to them. It's all they know.
Yeah.
And it's like, so how do we just be supportive, allow them to work through, and that's the thing we need to do, is teach kids how to work through their problems, give them that gift of understanding that problems will come, and they have the ability to, through themselves, as well as through being open in the connection with other people, they can work through that. And the community of that is what allows people to not feel alone and isolated, and like they're the only one that has problems. And I feel like those are some of the best ways that we can really connect with kids and show them. And that's what it is. It's not about telling them. We have to be able and be willing to show them. And it's like, if somebody told me to be vulnerable and they're not vulnerable, like we can all apply that to anything. Like, nobody likes a boss that isn't in the trenches with you.
Right.
Like, exactly. Go sit in your office, dude. Like, you want to talk to me about being out here? Like, then get in the ring with me, dude. You know?
Right.
And so I think we have to understand that, like, kids have the exact same mentality.
Mm-hmm. And as, you know, as friends, as parents, as, you know, whatever support you're showing to that other person, we screw up. We're human. That's part of our role here on this planet.
Yeah.
So it's okay that we screw up. And, you know, I'm just thinking of, like, if there's people watching that are thinking, oh my gosh, I just had this conversation with so-and-so and I totally tried to fix it. I totally tried to fix them. You know what? They are going to appreciate it so much more calling them again or talking to them again saying, gosh, you know, I'm sorry. I just fixed you all up and down, left and right. That was not my role. And I apologize for that. Like, or even to kids or, you know, whoever, just going back, opening that vulnerability conversation, showing them that vulnerability, saying, I screwed up.
I mean, I don't have anything to add, because it's so true. I mean, like, we respond more to people's mistakes than we do to anyone's perfection. Like,
absolutely,
you know, like, what?
Who can live up to that?
No one can.
No.
You know, you can't. And we're all going to fall short. We're all going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and it will happen. Like, you'll get better at things where you, like, if this is a new concept, like if someone's listening in this idea of, like, silencing the advice monster is a new concept, right? Like, you'll catch yourself doing it. And it'll happen. You'll catch yourself starting, and then and then you'll catch yourself a little quicker, and then you'll catch yourself quicker, and then you'll get really good at it and just listening. And then all of a sudden you'll be hungry one day, and someone brings you a problem, and then you just go in and boom and explain everything on how they need to fix it and how we just solved all the world's problems. And then you're like, oh my goodness, I was doing so good, you know, like,
right.
And it happens, and that's the idea of, you can't be clean. You can't take that shower on Monday, be clean all week. We get better at things. Mm-hmm. And when we stay on top of it, and when we're constantly doing the things that we know that help us, mm-hmm. Those step backs become less and less frequent. But they happen. You know, I've had a lot of times where in a lot of times it happens with the people that we're the closest with. That we, you know, like, I've had moments with, I love my sister to death. Mm-hmm. And there's times where I'm like, I've been awful, you know, like, you know, from a standpoint of, like, my heart's in the right place. I want to be helpful, but I'm not pausing and silencing I'm trying to fix everything. And, you know, I get that ego creeps in, and I think I'm, you know, God's gift to coaching and helping people, and I know everything, and 3 minutes with me and I'll solve all your problems, right? Like, we get in those mindsets, and then I always have to remember, like, get myself back to, like, dude, you're not that dope. Calm down, bro. Like, get over yourself. Like, have a moment. Like,
not only that, but that voice is always there.
Oh man.
Like, that doesn't mean we have to verbalize what we hear, but that voice is always there. We can, you know, dim it, you know, quiet it down. Mm-hmm. But you're right. It will absolutely show up for sure. Okay. Mm-hmm. I know I feel like, God, I'm lit up. Like, I feel like we could just keep talking for another hour. Yeah. I do want to ask you just even based on all of the experiences and the shit shows that you've been through, what would you say is the biggest lessons you learned about yourself?
That at my core, I want to be entitled, self-centered, judgmental, self-righteous. Like, that's my default. Like that, you know, like I've learned that, like, I have those defects, and that, not to say that I'm like, oh, I'm this broken person. Like, no, I have defects of character. I have places that I go, and I'm much quicker to identify them now and know when I'm slipping into those things. And I can, you know, and I also realize, like, you know, my massive amounts of being judgmental at times is completely out of my insecurity. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to judge others before they have time to judge me. You know, I want to judge, you know, I want to, you know, there's a quote we actually use it in TV. It's funny. It's like, there's two ways to build the tallest building in the world, or there's two ways to have the tallest building in the world. One is you build it. Two is you tear all the other buildings down.
I haven't heard that. That's funny.
And destruction is much easier than construction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that like, I just have to keep that in mind, to realize that like, I'm hard on myself, and I think that's what it is. You identify these things, and, and I'll end with this. I'll end with this on a last story, because I like to tell stories, but, this is a few years ago. I'm probably maybe like 5 years sober at this time. And I go to a meeting at a rehab facility, and there's a guy there. He's 29 years old. He walks in and he goes, I'm homeless. I'm wearing everything I own, and I want to get into this recovery center. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I drank yesterday, but my life has been awful for years. And I'm just trying to get in. And so the meeting goes through. Me and another couple guys end up talking to him afterward. And we're trying to encourage him and talk to him, give him some advice, listen to him, help him, get everything together. And I walk back to my car, and I realized like, this guy is about the same size as me. And I'd always have like a bag of clothes in my car, like emergency clothes. Right. And so I go, I can give this guy some clothes. So I go through, I had another little side bag, I put some old stuff in there, like, old pair of shoes, some socks, some stuff. So I put this little package together for him. Mm-hmm. And I walk up to him and I go, hey man, like, there's people out there that love you, that want to care for you. Like, just stick with it. And I give him the thing, give him a hug, and I start walking away. So I do this good deed. I'm feeling, whatever you want to call it, the presence of God, you want to feel whatever, that great feeling. And that amazing feeling lasted for about 37 seconds. And then the voice starts, oh, really, dude? You think you're special because you gave this guy some old clothes? Really? You want to pat yourself on the back now, dude? Oh, you think you're awesome because you helped this guy out? Like, you could have gave him more. Like, what? You didn't give him any money. Like, what's wrong? And I caught it, and I thought, oh my God, like, am I that broken? Is my brain that fault-seeking and that broken that I can't see this for what? And it really messed me up. Like, I'll be honest. Like I said, I'm sober for 5 years at this time, mm-hmm. and I was like, I don't know if do I have to go through a life of this, of battling this voice mm-hmm. that wants to tell me that everything I do is wrong, and I remember talking with an ex-girlfriend at the time, or she was a girlfriend at the time, not an ex-girlfriend, but. And she said something so crazy to me. It's so simple, but she goes, Phil, she goes, if your sister called you and told you that story, would you say any of this to her? Would you tell her she didn't give enough? Would you ever tell her that she should have gave more money, and what makes her think that she should feel good about that? Like, no.
Wow.
Never. So she was like, so what makes you feel like it's okay for you to do it to yourself?
Wow, that's profound.
And it was like, she also had been through therapy, so I think it was kind of, but it was like, that mentality of like, who is this image that I've created in my head of who I think I'm supposed to be, and how willing to destroy myself when I don't reach it am I? And so I always remember that whenever I start getting really hard on myself about career or this, or this isn't moving fast enough, or why did I bubble? And I always just remember, it's like, man, it's about progress, not perfection. Are you getting better? Mm-hmm. And if you're getting better, like, just give yourself a break, man.
Yeah.
It's okay. And so I don't know. I don't know if that story resonates with you or with anybody out there.
I love it. No, I love that story. I'm so glad you shared it. I'm glad you shared everything that you shared.
Well, thank you for letting me come on and talk a lot. Obviously, I'm 3.5 cups of coffee in. I'm ready to go.
This is a talk show. We talk here. We fucking talk a lot. Like, this is my jam. No, I'm super excited that can you imagine if I were to get on this podcast, whatever this is called?
Yeah.
And the person was like done after 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Like,
which happens. So No, well, I'm really glad that, and I just want to say, so thank you obviously for letting me come on and be a part of the show, but also to anyone that's, to watching online or listening on the podcast. If you've made it this long, obviously you had a good time and you took something away. And so we just want to, thank you very much for hanging out. And if you wouldn't mind and, leave a comment or a like on this, it always helps for, the podcast stations and things to be able to push the podcast further, so more people get an opportunity to see it. And if you feel compelled and you want to share it with someone, like, that's great. If you want to get in contact with me, my email is philipandrewla@gmail.com, or on social media platforms, it's @philipandrewla. I try to be encouraging on those things. So you can always get some of my information there. And if you just want to connect, bring me to your school, have me talk to your kids, whatever you want, or if there was something I said that you disagree with, I always love learning ways that what I say can be interpreted in different ways. So you actually would be doing me a huge service if you disagreed with me at some point and you let me know about it. So thank you all so much for listening. And Carly, thank you so much for having me on the Shit Show. I appreciate it.
Yes. I know. I was just going to ask where people could find you. So I'm going to put a link and the handles that you just mentioned in the comments section.
Excellent.
Down below this video. So I'm going to see what it takes to get you to come out to super warm 32 degrees and snow on the ground, Spokane, Washington.
Oh my goodness. Well, hey, school happens in May. No.
Yes, I think we'd be thawed by then.
That's awesome. So funny. But I'd love to. And thank you so much. It's been an honor. And I wish you all the best with the podcast, and let me know how I can support.
Thank you. Yes. Awesome. Take care. Thanks again. And see you next time. Okay. Bye.